Alright, I've never done a race recap video, so I'm gonna give it my best shot, so let's jump right in. So this past week, I ran the North Fork 50K in Pine, Colorado, led by the Bear Chase series, and it was absolutely epic. It really made me reconsider some of the things I'm doing of just focusing on Spartan races and the ultra distance and kind of thinking outside of, do I want to do more races with the trail community or continue to stick with the OCR world? But we'll jump into a little bit about that later in the video, so let's dive into a little bit about the race itself. So it was a 50K race, but it ended up being 33.3 miles or somewhere around there. Given that it was a trail, it couldn't be exactly 31 miles. I had about 3,800 feet of elevation gain. Weather was super perfect. I got there about 6:30. Start time was at 7:30, and it was about 45 degrees before the sun came up over the mountain. I think the highest that the weather got up to was roughly 70 degrees, but we had some clouds that came through to block the sun, so it really wasn't too bad of a race from a heat perspective. I ended up finishing the race in about 7.5 hours at about a 13:30 pace for the entire race. I found myself power hiking on the way up, jogging the flats, and try to run the downhills. I walked into this race with an Achilles and calf issue, so I started off really slow as I wanted to make sure that I was listening to my body versus my ego. The reason why I signed up for this race is because I really needed a redemption for what happened last month in Montana for the Spartan Ultra. I made it about 18.8 miles, 4,500 feet of elevation gain, and let's say 30-35 obstacles done. One thing I wasn't taking into consideration going into that race was the rain. I've never raced an obstacle course race during the rain, but it was a very big lesson that I learned. I should be practicing my grip strength in those types of conditions. I ended up doing my first DNF, which was quite a hit to the ego, so I had to do something to get myself back. Not only did I end up completing this race, but it felt really great to just do something different where the focus was on performance versus suffering. What do I mean by that? What I really enjoyed about this race is that it wasn't such an extreme condition where you have super high elevation gain like I experienced last year at the Spartan Ultra in Utah, which it had, I think, about 10,000 feet of elevation gain. This one had just under 4,000 feet. On top of that, there were aid stations every 5 miles after 13 miles. So mentally in my head, all I would think about were 5-mile bricks. Not to mention that these aid stations were real aid stations. When doing Spartan races, I was so used to just seeing a picnic table with some water jugs and some paper cups, and sometimes there would be a volunteer there. In this race, I got to the aid stations and there were watermelon, oranges, Oreos, M&Ms, water, Gatorade, ice, you name it. You name it. My mind was blown with all the different things that you can get from it. So I got into a habit with these aid stations of taking a shot of pickle juice to help with my sodium levels, eating a bunch of watermelon to help with hydration, taking another shot of pickle juice after that, and then asking for 2 scoops of ice to put in my CamelBak to not only keep my liquids cool, but to keep my back cool for the whole race. It really allowed me to think about my performance and being able to continue moving versus the heat from the sun. Another thing that really stuck out for me was how organized this company was. The week of the race, we probably got an email almost every day just giving us expectations around no reception being there, logistics on getting to the race, details on where exactly the aid stations are going to be, what the aid stations included, a detailed map of the race itself where it showed you exactly where you're going to be running and the type of hills that you're going to be climbing. So elevation gain through each climb, the grades of each climb, and it wasn't something where I felt like I was just going straight up on a climb. They were just gradual inclines, and that was kind of nice for a change. So it really made me start to think about, what do I want to do moving forward? Do I do Spartan Ultras exclusively, or do I do trail races that are ultra marathons that help me prepare for Spartan races and maybe just do the beast for Spartan? I can build my performance by doing these trail races of 50Ks and at some point bump up to 50 milers. I don't think I'm at that point yet, but I could see myself being at that level by next year. And from there, I can take that base that I've built to apply it to the beast distance in Spartan, which is a half marathon. And I would approach that race as a speed race, so I can run those 13 miles super fast because I've been practicing in 31-mile races. I have to say that it was really nice to do a race where it was super organized. There were great people in the community and the aid stations were amazing. So what's next? What I have next are 2 races in July. I'm going to be going to do the Spartan Beast in Utah, which is in the beginning of July, which is a national series race. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going to be doing the Pikes Peak Ultra Marathon in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which will be 31 miles of running and about 8,000 feet of elevation gain. So a little bit harder than the one I just completed. It's been really cool to just test myself out in these different areas. I know another thing that I did do this year was the High Rocks competition in Chicago and Dallas, and that was super cool because it really helped me think about functional training differently, which then impacted my programming that I do as a hybrid athlete. I think this trail running community is going to be something new that's also going to impact my OCR racing in a positive way. But one of the things I'm really trying to work on this year is to be agile and not be so rigid with my programming framework or just the way that I approach this fitness journey or whatever it is that you want to call it. I want to do these things that make me feel good and the things that I enjoy doing versus thinking I have to do this specific race because I said I was going to do it, or I want to do it because it's the hardest race in the world. I'm learning that not all races need to be a sufferfest, but more enjoyment of being in nature. It might sound a little woo-woo, but it's kind of what I felt in this past race, and maybe I'm a little still hyped from this race, but I can definitely see this being more part of my racing journey as an age group athlete. So there you have it. There was my experience with the North Fork 50K. 10 out of 10, definitely would recommend it if anybody was wanting to check that out. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. I also wrote an article just covering a little bit more detail about what I'm talking to you about in this video. There's a link below for that article in the description, plus a link to the Bear Chase Series website where you can see any of their other races that they host. I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.